In this experiment, fruit roll-ups is the oceanic crust plates. Frosting is going to represent the asthenosphere, and the graham crackers represents continental crust.
Does that sound on or off?
This experiment will show divergent plate boundary, continental-oceanic, continental-continental, transformed plate boundary, and oceanic-oceanic.
What if they see that?
No?
As you slowly press down on the oceanic plates, because they are dense, they will sink into the asthenosphere.
Give me a face. Okay.
As you press the continental crust into the oceanic slips under the continental and has been subducted.
Awesome. Sure. At least be a guy. You'll be $150.
Oh, this is gross. Okay, that's good.
The pushing of the plates in opposite directions simulate a transformed plate boundary like the San Andreas Fault.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
In this experiment, fruit roll-ups is the oceanic crust plates. Frosting is going to represent the asthenosphere, and the graham crackers represents continental crust.
Does that sound on or off?
This experiment will show divergent plate boundary, continental-oceanic, continental-continental, transformed plate boundary, and oceanic-oceanic.
What if they see that?
No?
As you slowly press down on the oceanic plates, because they are dense, they will sink into the asthenosphere.
Give me a face. Okay.
As you press the continental crust into the oceanic slips under the continental and has been subducted.
Awesome. Sure. At least be a guy. You'll be $150.
Oh, this is gross. Okay, that's good.
The pushing of the plates in opposite directions simulate a transformed plate boundary like the San Andreas Fault.
Okay, that's good. Okay, you're videotaping? Okay, point it up here.
In continental-continental collision, both plates slide into each other and create mountain ranges such as the Appalachian.
Transform boundaries. One day, Los Angeles will be in Northern California because of these boundaries.
Transform boundaries are places where two averse plates slip past each other in opposite directions. In this slabs of graham crackers represent plates of continental crust, and frosting is the asthenosphere.
Convergent boundaries. They're the kind of boundaries that you hear about in the news, the kind that either make mountains or make subduction occur. But many don't know when it happens. When mountains form, it is when two continental plates collide and push crust upwards. When subduction occurs, it is when either two oceanic plates or one oceanic plate or one continental plate collide. Whichever plate is denser is the one that sinks. In this case, the oceanic plate is below the continental plate.
Divergent boundaries. These boundaries are the opposite of convergent boundaries. Here, two plates move apart from one another.
Most divergent boundaries occur at the mid-ocean ridge, the longest mountain range in the world, with a total length of 60,000 kilometers. Those are underwater. The divergent boundaries on land are called rift valleys.
The fruit roll-up acts as the oceanic crust with a convergent boundary. This is the oceanic crust and continental crust creating a convergent boundary. Continental to continental crust converging.
This forms mountains.
Continental to continental crust creating a transform boundary. Like the San Andreas Fault in California.
Now we are at the continental-oceanic crust collision. Because the oceanic crust is denser than the continental crust, it will sink below the continental crust. This forms a trench.
Now we're going to do a transform boundary. A transform boundary is when two plates move past each other in opposite directions. In this clip, the plates are represented by graham crackers. The graham crackers are going to be moved upward and downward slowly until they are fully moved past each other.
Now we are going to do an oceanic versus oceanic crust collision. When these two plates collide, the molten material underneath will come up. An example, mid-ocean ridge.
When two continents collide, they form mountains, much like the Himalayas. To represent this, we took two graham crackers and wetted the sides, and pushed them together slowly. As you can see, they form folds, or mountains. Now we are going to do a divergent plate boundary. Fruit roll-ups represent the plates. The plates move apart slowly. On land, this will form a rift valley.
Divergent plate boundary.
Oceanic to oceanic, this is where two plates move apart. Transform plate boundaries where two continental plates move past each other in opposite directions. Convergent continental to oceanic crust collision. Subduction occurs. Convergent continental to continental collision. Mountains may form. Convergent oceanic to oceanic collision. Two plates move toward each other. Subduction occurs.
We will be using fruit roll-ups as oceanic crust, graham crackers as plates of continental crust, frosting as the asthenosphere, and wax paper to put all the supplies on.
This is where two oceanic crusts move apart, which breaks the Minoan ridge.
When two oceanic plates collide, subduction occurs, which means one plate sinks under the other.
When two continental plates move in opposite directions, a fault usually forms.
When the oceanic and continental plate collide, subduction occurs because the oceanic plate is more dense. This is where two continental crusts move toward each other, and the crusts squeeze together because neither plate is dense enough to sink into the mantle. This collision forms mountain ranges.
These two fruit roll-ups represent two oceanic plates. As they diverge, they move down and outwards from each other. Molten material comes out from in between plates and could also be known as C4 spray.
These fruit roll-ups represent one oceanic plate and one continental plate. Because the oceanic plate is more dense than the continental plate, when they collide, the oceanic plate plunges beneath the continental plate and back into the mantle. This process is also known as subduction.
So that one's actually going back down.
In this model, these two graham crackers represent two different continental plates. As they move in opposite directions, they cause earthquakes to happen.
These two graham crackers represent two different continental plates. As they collide, they fold and form mountains.
Divergent boundaries are when two plates move apart and diverge. When divergent boundaries form, it's called a rift valley. Transformation boundaries are places where two plates slip past each other, moving in opposite directions. Earthquakes often frequently occur. When a continental plate and an oceanic plate converge, the more dense oceanic plate sinks below the less dense continental plate. When two oceanic crusts converge, the more dense plate goes below the less dense plate. When two continental crusts meet, they form mountain ranges, as in the Himalayas and the Alps.
This is our transformant boundary. There are two graham crackers that stand for the continental plates in this model. They are moving away from each other in opposite directions. In a real-life situation, it could produce an earthquake. This is how it will look.
That was boring. Let's show them mine. I will be demonstrating a divergent boundary. This boundary occurs at mid-ocean ridges in real life. In this model, I will show you what happens when oceanic crust moves apart. The fruit roll-ups represent the oceanic crust. Let's see what happens.
We saved the best for last, the convergent plate boundaries. In this model, I will show you what happens when continental crust collides with oceanic crust. The graham crackers will be the continental crust, and the fruit roll-ups will be the oceanic crust. In real life, subduction would occur because the oceanic crust would sink beneath the continental crust. Let's watch and see what happens.
Today we'll be experimenting a demonstration on the tectonic plates. The frosting will represent the asthenosphere, and the graham crackers and fruit roll-ups are represented as the plate.
These are the continental plates that come together and make mountain ranges.
Now this is the convergent boundary, including the two oceanic plates. One of them subducts underneath the other, going into a trench.
As you can see, these are the continental to oceanic plates. The oceanic plate is subducting underneath the continental plate because it is less dense.
Next is the transformed plate boundary, including two continental plates. This is different than other boundaries because they are slipping past each other in opposite directions.
This is a divergent boundary with two oceanic plates forcing the crust up, making a mid-ocean ridge.
Today we are constructing models of plate boundaries. The graham crackers represent the continental crust, the fruit roll-ups represent the oceanic crust, and the blue frosting represents the mantle.
This is a convergent plate boundary between oceanic plates. The denser plate subducts underneath the less dense plate.
When oceanic plates come apart or diverge, magma rises up between the plates and forms mountain chains.
When a continental plate and an oceanic plate converge, at the oceanic plate subducts into the mantle.
A transform boundary occurs when two plates moving in opposite directions slip past each other. Earthquakes are common along these boundaries. A convergent boundary involving two continental plates results in the rise of huge mountain ranges.
As these two plates pull apart, the magma from the asthenosphere is rising above. The oceanic crust is less dense than the continental crust, so the oceanic crust ends up on bottom. These are the two plates of continental crust rising off the asthenosphere and slipping past each other.
Watch as I show you as two continental plates collide and form mountains.